Welcome to Wild and Exposed, your #1 adventure, nature, and outdoor photography podcast. Wild and Exposed is hosted by Mauro, Ron Hayes, and Jason Loftus. Thanks for tuning in.
All right, well, I guess who's kicking this thing off? I guess we never talked about that. Ron's usually the guy.
Oh, shoot, Ron.
Well, let's see.
All right, well, welcome to another episode of Wild and Exposed podcast. Tonight, it's going to be Jason Loftus and myself, and we're talking to Drew Butterwick coming to us from Texas, sounds like. So representing the Central Time Zone will be the two Drews tonight. And my first question right out of the gate is, Drew, what advantages have you found in the photographic world by having the name Drew, and how is it superior to other names?
Well, Drew, as you know, it's just it's something that just comes to you at birth. I mean, we didn't do it. I mean, our parents did it. We're not sure why, but I mean, ever since that moment, since the swat on the behind that started us off screaming, it's just been I don't know. It's been a better path, a higher path, if you will.
It set us up for success, and I don't want to make Jason feel too left out. Jason, that's all right.
Too late. I get how tonight's going to go. That's okay.
Apparently, it gave us the gift of BS. I'm not sure what else it gave us.
But we're not picking on anybody here, Jason.
No.
That's funny. That's great.
Well, so Jason, let's get a little update from you. Where the heck are you?
I am doing amazing, first of all. I'm feeling very fortunate. Getting ready to go hit the Elkwoods, and it's like countdown, like I'm leaving tomorrow, which is exciting for me. As we all talk, I live for this time of year every year. This is crunch time for me. This is go time. So real excited about that. And here in Utah, and right now, looking at the weather, we're actually finally getting some cool weather. It's been in the mid to low 70s today, and we're getting some good rain. So that's very good. That's something we need. There's been a lot of fires here in the West, and I don't know how many in Colorado, but there's some big ones in Idaho, and we've been getting that downward draft from Idaho, and the smoke's just been filling the air here really bad. So that's a very common issue out here in the West, obviously, but these storms and the wind and that has really knocked that down. So it's been very nice.
Yeah, I heard it was like 175 degrees.
Yeah, right. It went from 107 literally to Fahrenheit to now it's in the 70s, which is great. So this is normal weather for us this time of year.
I am so looking forward to that Colorado weather.
Drew's like, every time we get on, we're always complaining about how hot it is, and Drew even has it worse right down there in Texas because of the humidity too. But Drew H up there in the north is like, well, I don't know what you guys are talking about. It's mid 50s and wonderful here,
It's darn near perfect. It's a little slice of heaven right here in Churchill, Manitoba. No, things have been going well here. Let's see. Trying to think of big things I've had going on. Oh yeah, I got married last week.
Wow.
Yep. So sorry I missed the recording.
Congratulations.
While I was getting married, you guys were recording a podcast. So it was well attended. We had a couple dozen of our friends and about a couple hundred beluga whales swimming through. It was right down on the rocks. It was incredible. Really got lucky with the weather, and it was just so perfect. And then we had our reception actually right here in this room where it's a multi-purpose space. And so we had a little fire out in front, and had a beautiful Northern Lights show just right over the reception. I'm pretty sure it was Northern Lights. You know how those receptions can go, but it was a good time. We got the deed done. And so we're official now, and we're pretty stoked on it. So sorry you guys couldn't be here, and you were down in the heat, but it was perfect.
No, don't. You're not running. Congrats, by the way, too. That's so cool.
That was very nice. Very nice.
Thank you. So are you guys, you're talking about elk rut starting up here. So are you guys meeting up next week, or what's the deal?
Yeah, we'll be doing a little bit of that. Yeah,
we will be.
We'll connect a little bit in the field, and I think Drew's got a couple other things he's going to be focusing on too in the interim. But yeah, it's always good. One of the things that we benefit from, and a lot of the local photographers end up, going to the same areas, as we all know. So yeah, it's fun to run into old friends and to see people and get to see new people and get acquainted with other folks. So that'll definitely be part of it.
Well, I'm stoked to meet another Drew here tonight. So forgive me if I just rush into all these questions, but a little bit about yourself. What's your background? What got you here today?
Oh gosh, I've got a very diverse background, so I won't bore you with the entire diversity. I mean, focusing more on the photography side kind of comes from a mostly marketing background. When I was in college, I actually did take photography classes at University of Colorado at Boulder. I always loved the outdoors. I always loved, running around with the animals. I mean, I got to go up to Rocky Mountain National Park back in the heyday, when there was no one there. Colorado in itself, just being a beautiful place to go out and shoot photos. Of course, back then we were shooting on film and we were riding dinosaurs out to the park. And, it was a good time back then. Then it kind of led into a TV thing. I shot a lot of video, a lot of television for a while, kind of got away from stills because for a while, still photography was kind of passé. And luckily, once everybody got a phone that did video and the world went to starting to hit social media, everybody became a video producer in their own home. And then real good still photography kind of came back online, and a good appreciation for the art and what it takes to, actually make the good still. I mean, video is actually easier to create than stills. And that kind of came back on as an art form, not just something for commercial photography or, for magazines, etc. And I kind of started to fall back into that. Part of it was a commercial side for business. Part of it was, really getting back in as a passion. And then, once we started to hit the digital age, things just took off. And I was able, fortunately, with business and whatnot, to start spending more time outdoors, and then kind of pushed away from the other side of it and decided that photography was going to be the mainstay. So it's about 90% of what I do now on various facets.
What's your business model then? How do you make your living in photography these days?
A couple years ago, going into COVID, somebody wrote an article that talked about how they survived in downtimes. And I kind of, I didn't use it as a model. I was just very interested that I kind of paralleled that. In that I do photography for resorts and high-end ranches in Texas and actually other resorts around the world. I do photo workshops, lead photo safaris, and then I sell prints as well. And, collectively, they add up to a pretty nice package. And it's a synergy. I will literally run into people on a property that turn out to be photo clients. I will be, on a shoot somewhere, and they'll be somebody that will turn out buying a print. I can be someplace exhibiting, and somebody will ask me to shoot photos for their real estate or for their resort. So, I mean, it kind of rolls together. And I do, of course, I'd prefer to be out in the field chasing animals all the time, but the other stuff fills in the gaps, and it's kind of created a pretty good calendar.
Keeps you busy.
Oh, for sure. I mean, I'm as busy as I want to be. I actually have to work on throttling it back a little bit sometimes. Eventually they say we should edit the photos. So
at least take a look at them.
You mean besides on the screen, on the back of the camera that day?
Oh, ain't nobody got time for that. Well, how do you guys know each other then?
So, yeah, I think we met through social media, essentially, and then we actually started to do some things together. And Drew was actually the one that led the African safari that I went on this year. So we did a podcast about that already and talked about a lot of the specifics of that trip. But Drew and I become friends through social media, and we're working on doing some workshops and stuff together as we move forward here. So.
Yeah, I went and introduced myself to Jason. I mean, we'd met online, spoken several times, but I introduced myself to him at a trade show where he actually had a booth and showing photos. I was there for a different reason. And then, at some point in time, we said, I'm sure we'll run into each other in the field. And well, since then, it's been a lot of time in the field. So.
And that field happened to be Africa.
Well, it started off, I think the first time was in Colorado, and we've done Yellowstone a couple times since then. And, Colorado a couple times, ended up in Africa. So, yeah, it's been a few times. You know, when you're chasing the seasons, it's amazing how many people end up in the same spot, kind of going after the
Yeah.
same thing.
You know, that sounded like a heck of a trip. And I haven't even seen all Jason's pictures yet, but he was actually texting us the menu from dinner several nights. And so like I haven't even seen pictures and I'm jealous just from what I heard.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you know, some of the times we rough it, some of the times, you know, we're remote, and then sometimes we're not remote nor roughing it. And that was kind of the case most of the time in Africa. You know, it is obviously probably the most photogenic place on the planet. You know, it's almost like going to a different world, not just going to a different continent. And at the same token, it's probably the most gentlemanly kind of photo trip you can go on. I mean, the service and the way the people treat you, the welcoming part of it, I mean, the breakfast and the breakfast in the bush and the teas and the high teas and the lunch and the dinner and the after dinner. I mean, it's as much a social dining you know, affair than it is photography all day long. I mean, it's almost too much sometimes. It's almost too much service, almost too much of that, you know, fine experience. You know, you want to get back out and, you know, on a cloudy day especially, and get in the field and, you know, they're ready to serve you tea again.
But you haven't had
Right.
second
No, that's a
breakfast.
fact too.
Oh,
Yeah.
we talked about that actually. We talked about how we were on Hobbit time over there for sure.
well, you guys were both there. Describe some highlights of your African adventure then. What did I miss out by not being there?
I'll just real quick. I'm going to hit on that second breakfast because that was funny. The first morning we came back in, I went to the main area, the shared area, whatever, the common area, and there was like fresh fruit and cereal and like granola and yogurt and some charcuterie board stuff, cheeses and meats and stuff. And I'm like, wow, this is a pretty nice little spread for breakfast. It's like, this is great. So I grabbed me some fruit and some cheese and stuff, and I'm over there munching away on it, thinking this is breakfast. And then about 20 minutes later, they came out and said, okay, everybody come sit down, it's time for breakfast. And it's like, breakfast? What are you talking about? Like, yeah, that was just the warm up. Now it's time to like order your eggs how you want them and get the full on breakfast. I was like, holy cow. So, but yeah, it was quite the experience. There was times when, no joke, went to Drew's point where it's almost like too much. Like it's kind of like, you need it. You good? You have a drink? You got a drink? You're good? Yeah, no, I'm good. You literally just handed me this one. I'm good. I promise, man. But it's in a good way. You know what I mean? But yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, in the world that we've kind of lost service overall, I mean, I think that's almost a lost art, is good service, customer service, and attention to detail, and they haven't lost it. I mean, it is definitely still there. They're, might call it a third world country and leave it at that, but it's not. The old kind of old school service that they bring is pleasurable. I mean, it's really an excellent experience from that point.
Yeah. Yeah, and I would say, just from my perspective, the highlights were just the animals. I mean, that's what I was there for. That's what I was focused on. Not to reiterate too much of what we did on the first show, but just the variety. Like Drew's really already hit on a lot of it, but it's insane to describe the variety. I mean, I don't feel like there was. I cannot remember a single moment when we were out looking for animals where I couldn't see something that was an animal at all times. Like, even if it was an impala, I mean, I could see some animal every time we went around a bush, a tree, over a hill. Didn't matter. There was animals to look at, which is just incredible. Matter of fact, my wife told me recently, we went to Yellowstone in the middle of the summer for a family trip, and we saw some bison, and that was about it, because it's summer, it's hot, not a lot's out. It was the middle of the day when we were there, but my wife was literally like, I think I'm ruined. Like, I want to see stuff, and Africa ruined me, because I see stuff all day long, all the time, and now we're not hardly seeing anything, so.
It's the truth. It spoils you. Well, I mean, when you say highlights, the thing of it is that, you can go out, like Jason said, you can look in almost any direction, almost any time, and there's either giraffe, or there's zebra, or there's wildebeest, or there's little mongoose, or the variety of birds, which Jason and various other people will take photos of. and that part's just along the way. You're looking for that exciting, dynamic, cheetah chase or something like that. And you do get spoiled. You get super spoiled so quick because there's so many things that like your mind is wrapped around that these are Nat Geo photos. These are these amazing things, and they're all day occurrences over there. I mean, you just have so many opportunities to see stuff. But then when you run across things like, I mean, I would definitely say one of our high points of that trip was those wild dogs, that we ran into for a couple of days there, in and out. I mean, we had more wild dog encounters than some people get in a lifetime in 2 days, and multiple chases and interaction with hyenas. And I mean, Jason's, going through pockets trying to find batteries and cards and refilling. I mean, it's incredible like that. The stuff that pops up, everything was already good, and then you get these, these encounters that you hope for, but you just never know that you just can't top.
So, do you have any funny stories about Jason in the field? Were there anything comedic happen? Anything we should know about? It's just us.
Right.
Here. We're not. It's just the three of us chatting here. Nobody will ever know.
I have some excellent photos actually of Jason hanging completely out of a vehicle, turned around backwards, trying to get
I would
hyena
never do
shots.
such.
And everybody said, keep your hands and feet inside the ride at all times.
Except for when there's hyenas behind you. Yeah. No.
Yeah, yeah. I will say that when you've never done it, whether it's bears, elephants, it doesn't matter. Elk. I mean, if you're in the elk in the park and you've never been around them, a bull comes charging down the hill, he's bugling. That's intimidating. You find out later that they're not really much of a threat. They're hardly paying attention to you. Over time you start to learn your animal behavior and whatnot, and it's only from being there. And so the first time we really came into an encounter with lions, I was in the vehicle with Jason, and I'm kind of pushing the envelope. I mean, I'm not trying to get my hand bit, but I'm not keeping my hands necessarily inside there, kind of getting close. And I looked over at Jason because the opportunity was on his side. And he was sitting up very straight and had his hands inside the vehicle, and he did not want to get his hand bit. So, everybody's got their own tolerance level, but over time you do decide what you can and can't get away with, with anything there. But same thing with our elephants, in the road and whatnot. We had some good close stuff that was fun for some and not as fun for others.
So, Jason, what were you worried about? It sounds like it just takes a little trial and error and everything works out.
Well, you got to understand, you're literally, and I think a lot of it, Drew's right. When I first started spending time around bears, black bears and grizzly bears, there was a learning period right there where, I've spent a lot of time in the outdoors throughout my entire life, but you still, when you don't spend a lot of time around those animals, you got to learn their behaviors. You got to learn to, what kind of tolerance do they have, right? And what kind of animal is it really? Because we're all raised as little kids, for the most part, thinking that these predators are just mean, nasty, and they want to kill and eat everything around them, right? That's kind of the perspective that's kind of out there. And everybody, you learn over time, like sharks, for example, and bears, whatever, they're all just doing their thing. They don't really care too much about you. And for the most part, they don't want anything to do with you. So you get used to that and you start to build a comfort level, and then, then you're in a better situation. This is my first time around any of these big cats, and I'm telling you, when you're point blank, literally a foot from a lion, a large male lion walking right by the truck, and there's nothing between you and him, and it's a little intimidating, and he did not
It is
want,
intimidating.
he did not want anything to do with me. I'm positive of that. But there's also, that's my very first time I've had an encounter with a lion like that. And I wasn't about to try to push the issue or try to find out otherwise, So, but yeah, no, I mean, that's the bottom line. That's from my perspective. It wasn't a fear thing. It was more of a respect thing and more of a, hey, I don't never been around these critters like this. And, I definitely don't want to do something stupid that's, going to put me or anybody else in the vehicle at jeopardy. So, but.
Don't
and
be
you don't want
that
to be
Right. I
guy.
don't
that
want to
guy
be.
either, right?
I want to be that guy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Don't be the next
Right.
viral video.
Yeah. I looked over and Drew was videoing me his phone. I don't know what that was about, but no.
Oh, he was talking about his diverse
Right.
business model and viral video. That should be in everybody's portfolio these
Top of the
days.
list.
Oh, I've got a lot in reserve, I mean, part of it could be for blackmail. It's possible, if the photography thing is not working and slowing down, I've always got that avenue I can't take.
Yeah. But that also cues in on Drew H and Drew B, both of you guys. We've talked about it so many times on the show, but that's another reason and another benefit why it's so good when you haven't had those experiences to go with a guide and to go with somebody that knows the animals and knows where you're at and can keep you safe and can let you know where you're pushing the boundaries and where you're not. And you know what I mean? They know the animals' behavior. They've been around them so many times. I mean, Drew's been to Africa 25 years or something like that. Drew, you've spent so much time up there with the bears. Either pick your poison. You go with somebody like you guys, and you're going to be taken care of. You're going to be in a good situation. You're going to be safe, and that's another reason why. And I feel it's important to go with a guide, especially on a first time trip or something like that. But
I always say it's good to bring back at least 80% of your people so that they can come back as return.
That's a really good policy.
That's a reasonable number. That's a reasonable
that's what we're
number.
always going
for.
It
might be a little high, but it's a reasonable number.
Jason, that lion just bit your hand.
Well, we do have a standing joke over there. When we get back to camp the first day, we say, all right, everybody made it back. That's one more than the last time we did this.
So, Drew, it's not just about Africa for you, though. You go other places. I was looking at your website, and you've got quite the annual migration.
It's definitely a chasing the seasons. That January, February time frame, winter shots. If we're talking North America, so you're looking at the Yellowstone stuff, trying to get the wolves, obviously, but foxes, coyotes. They're doing their mating thing. Winter bison. Good stuff. Yellowstone's not the only place. I mean, other North America winter stuff is good, but I mean, that's obviously a great mecca for it. Some stuff down in the Tetons. Otherwise, you'd have to hop international, which we're trying to put together a trip that's an annual one starting this next year for sure, which is back to the to the Masai Mara in Kenya in February, because it's kind of big cat time. There's so many little ones hitting the ground, and it's kind of a little macabre, but because it's baby on the ground time, it's also cats moving in for lunch, snacks kind of time too. So I mean, it's a time to be there for some of that photographically. And then we hit the spring, you start talking about spring bears in Yellowstone. Pretty soon you move into the bears in Alaska. When you hit the fall, we're talking about elk. We're talking about, the Moose Alaska trips, other bear trips. Actually digressing back to August, that's migration time over in Africa, good dry time in Africa as well, both South Africa and Kenya. Then you get into the Teton stuff in October. And then November kind of brings you around to Patagonia cats and the Pantanal down in Brazil for the jaguars and the crocodiles. And then you kind of hit the holidays and you're back full circle to January again. So, it's really just kind of trying to go to the best place at the best time for those photographic opportunities.
Do you ever just sit still?
I've been here for about half an hour right now. So,
I got you clocked at 24 minutes in one spot. New record.
It felt like 30 minutes. It felt like 30.
Well, talking to us feels like forever. I understand.
Yeah, so I mean, I joked with Jason a couple of weeks ago. I actually bounced down to Mexico after I got back from Africa for just a quick 2-day trip. I was on a real estate kind of resort shoot down there, just down and back, and I had said, if I sit around for too long, I get mossy, and it's usually only a couple weeks before that starts to set in. So
I don't know how many texts I've got. Well, I couldn't stand it, and it's his feet on an airplane. Guess where I'm off to now? I was like, holy cow. Now where are you going,
Well, you can't fly 100,000 miles a year
That's true.
if you stay at home. You can't do it. So yeah, you've got to get out there and fly if you're going to get it done.
Good point. Good point. So, and you've been doing this for so long. What are some of the standout memories? Like what really, because we ask pretty much all the guests this. Like what is maybe your top wildlife memory? What keeps you going back for more, so to speak?
Ooh. Gosh, I mean, to answer that truthfully, I'm probably going to have to set a bad example here because, well, and I want to preface this with, I do not believe people should follow examples that they see online and go out and play with wild animals and get close and get in situations that are going to get them hurt, injured, or otherwise. It's bad. But the close encounters is definitely what takes me back. Those animals that are right there, the big dangerous game, getting those low angle shots of animals that are just, 10 yards, 20 yards, 30 yards, where you can. Obviously, I'm not 20 or 30 yards away from bears in Yellowstone because they want us to stay, 100 yards away, and we're pretty good about that. I know everybody isn't, but I do not want to get in trouble in a national park. I do not want to get my pass pulled. I do not want to get sidelined. So, I try to follow the rules, as much as we can. But where we don't have those exact same limits. I mean, like at Katmai, for example, in the brooks and whatnot, when we can get 30, 40 yards away from bears, and you're in the rivers, you're in those scenarios with them, it's pretty special. And I guess, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. Having those mock bear charges and coming out of it with that paws out of the water, toenails, water splashing shot. When you get those things, it makes you want to go again. It makes you want to go do something else like that. It makes you want to go make the next epic photo. And I don't know how many sunrises and sunsets I've seen. But I try to get out for all of them. And every time I get one of those amazing, like blood orange, red sunrise, sunsets, you get the silhouette, you get the fire, you get the rim light. It fires me up to go do it again, go for the next one. When you get that shot that you're looking for, especially if you've got it in your mind. If you're forward thinking, if you leave out in the morning and you're going to have the conditions for that amazing sunrise, and you've kind of got an idea where you can find whatever it is, the elk or the lion or the elephant, and you can get that hillside ridge line silhouette, whatnot, it makes it worth it. I mean, that to me is that's the drug. That's the addiction that keeps us going, that gets us back out there, is when you create a shot in your mind and then you actually put it on the card, and eventually put it to print.
I live in the north. I can only do sunrise and sunset in the winter.
Yeah,
we don't keep civilized hours. There's no way I'm getting up at 3 and then staying up all. Yeah, I just can't do them. Getting too old for that. But wintertime. Yeah, that's smarter, not harder.
Right? Yeah, well, and the sun's almost up for 2 hours in the winter too, so you've got
2 golden hours.
Right.
Yeah.
You don't even need sun. Do you even need sunscreen then? I don't think you need sunscreen then.
There's no exposed skin at that point. It doesn't. You need wind protection. So yeah. So what's next for you? Like, you're sitting still. We've got you we're clocked at 29 minutes now. Where are you going next?
So I'm 3 days away from heading off to Colorado. That's where Jason and I are going to meet up there.
Right.
And we got fall colors, we got elk screaming. At one point in time, I said, if the elk bugled year round, I'd never leave the woods. I mean, that's my favorite thing, and I think for so many of us out in the West, it is. There's hardly anything else that's as majestic. And the head tilt back, the scream, the dragon breath.
The look in their eye.
The
The
elk
look
have
in
got
their
it all.
eye.
They're the crazy eye, the white, they're charismatic. They do all the stuff. Some animals, we had like this great badger encounter this last year in Yellowstone. Point blank on the ground. It's a badger on the ground. It's not exciting. There's nothing exciting about it. And I mean, a little 6-point bull standing on a ridge, tilting his head, throwing dragon breath is amazing. Um, I mean, they are so charismatic. So always looking forward to that. I'm probably going to shoot up to the Tetons and spend a little bit of time up there, go to a couple of hidden spots that social media hasn't screwed up yet. And then I'm off to actually start working with a little bit of underwater photography. I'm going to go down to the Baja for a week. And then I am going back overseas. I'm going to Europe for a month to shoot some different things I haven't shot before over there. Some time in Spain, some time in Italy, a little bit of time on the France-Swiss border, trying to chase some ibex. And, then back for trade shows in the holidays and turn and burn and back off because January is the big Kilimanjaro climb this year. And then it's Masai Mara Big Cats. So, the next few months have a few things going on. Have a couple things planned.
Oh man, it just means, I mean, you're another antler guy. I mean, Jason's an antler guy, Ron's an antler guy. Like, I feel like Michael and I, being the bear folks, we really get outnumbered now when we have the antler crew. And particularly, it's 2 against 1 tonight. I mean, you started out strong with a lot of like tooth and claw talk, and you really hooked me with that. But then I guess it always just comes back to the antlers for you guys.
I'm kind of 50-50. I really am 50-50 because I'm definitely a tooth and claw guy too.
Okay, we'll let you ride the fence for a little bit.
Look, I'm not a bird guy. Definitively not a bird guy. And my camera doesn't have a duck setting. I've looked for it, and there's no duck setting. So whenever I'm with Jason and the rest of the crew, I have to watch them shoot the ducks because my camera is incapable of actually taking.
Well, and let me clarify real quick. A duck could be a grouse. It could be a great blue herring. It could be any bird. It's a duck to Drew. Let's just be clear.
It's true. If it has feathers, it's a duck.
In the Sony menus, is there a duck and a not duck setting with the iFocus now? Like, how's that? You shoot Sony, right?
It's tooth, claw, antler. That's all I've been able to find in the Sony menu. Yeah, tooth, claw, antler. Yeah.
It locks on, doesn't let go.
Yeah, and tooth and claw is a macro mode. A lot of people don't realize that.
So with all this jet setting around, what's your kit look like? I mean, you're in planes, you're in Jeeps, you're in whatever, globetrotting. Like, how do you get everything you need done photographically, equipment wise?
Well, so obviously, standard is definitely it's a double gun. I mean, having 2 cameras ready. You don't have to. I mean, those people out there that, can only afford one setup, there's nothing wrong with swapping out. It's just that, when you're in the moment and, you've got a cheetah chase coming up, the entire event might last 10 or 12 seconds. If you're going to try to swap out lenses in the middle, you're going to miss it. I mean, you can't. So you'd have to pick a lens. And I would say, probably 70% of the time I shoot a 70-200. 70-200 2.8 is really probably my go-to lens, about 2/3, a little better than 2/3 of the time. Next would definitely be the 400 2.8. I've kind of gotten away from the 500, 600, 800 by virtue of too much atmospheric interference, whether it's heat waves, whether it's dust, whether it's snow and ice particles. It's just that, stuff that you normally would reach out to with a 500, 600, or 800, I just find that I'm not getting those crisp images anyway. And I pass the documentary side of things. I don't just want to take a photo of a wolf. I don't just want to take a photo of an elephant. I want to have something that I'm striving to be print quality, be it magazine or a fine art print. So that's kind of got me dialed back to shooting that 400 2.8 mostly. I do have a 1.4x converter for it, so I can push it out to 560. And there's times when the conditions call for it and allow for it. Cold mornings, the dust is down, low wind. I mean, there's definitely times you can push out there and still get those great images. But so much of the time it seems like we're getting in tighter. And I'm looking for a little bit more of a of a naturescape than a portrait on a lot of my style. And so I'll kind of default to that 70 to 200. And I'll even sometimes take out a 55 or, the 16 to 35. I shot last year 24 to 70, for wildlife. And I was looking for these super panos, big landscape photos. And I actually forced myself to work on that, forced myself to actually practice taking just landscapes and work on a little bit more depth of field. Because when we're shooting portraits, obviously, you're looking for that mega bokeh effect, that foreground's just creamy and gone and the background's creamy and gone, and, tack eyes and tack forward tines. And when you start shooting naturescapes, you actually kind of have to change your mindset. I mean, you're increasing depth of field. You're shooting wider, you're shooting closer. You literally have to change your overall mindset. So instead of trying to swap out to third lens, fourth lens kind of thing, there's times when I'll just do that. So it won't be like the 70-200 and the 400 and the 24 to 70 or the 55 or the 85. I'll just, on those times, I'll kind of push to that portrait lens, for that landscape, for the naturescape.
So Drew, you're shooting Sony. Did you mention that already?
Yeah, I think the other Drew did.
So you're shooting
Yes.
Sony. You shot Nikon before that. You've been shooting long enough. I'm assuming you started shooting when it was the film days.
Started film days and I started Canon. So I've shot Canon, I've shot Nikon, and I've shot Sony. And I love the Sony side these days. Nikon was my go-to forever, right? And it was that transition because the long glass wasn't there. Had some problems, with the mirrorless was that jump. And I know that you've had such super success with the Canon. I think they even share some chips. Some of those mother chips come out of the same factory. So I think we're looking at actually the same technology with a different brand on it for the most part, in getting that quick eye detection and some of those cheats that really help us look better. That the computers these days obviously help us look like we're better at our job than we are.
No, that's true.
Giving credit where credit is honestly due.
Going back to the film days and just thinking about where we are now, can you imagine rolling on this African safari that you're raving about, Jason, with, toting all your film with you, like and limited.
My God.
Like how many photos did you shoot in Africa there? And if you're doing that at 32 exposures per roll, how does that pencil out?
Well, how about having bad specs the entire trip and not knowing it until 2 weeks after you got home? Because Jason, what were your big days over there? What were you firing away?
Well, I took over for the entire trip a little over 20,000 images, which is that's in 7 days of photography. Yeah.
Now, is that one shot of each animal you saw,
Right.
or how? What?
Just about. It was one shot of every Impala he saw.
Yeah, there's lots of Impalas over there, but no, I was just trying to think. I mean, there was some days where obviously like the wild dogs and the hyenas and those interactions where you're letting it rip a little more. But it's like anything. When you first take a photo of an animal, at least for me, it's like, oh, cool, I got a shot of a hyena, and it's like, okay, now I need to think about let's get a good shot of a hyena. And it's like, okay, well, the light's gone. That's great. Okay, well, now let's do some unique stuff with the hyena. Let's get some backlight, or let's get some. So it was a little bit of that through the entire process, and I got a little more selective as the trip went on for sure. But yeah, I was not afraid to let it rip, and I don't think any of us should be, especially with the advantages we have that way today. I mean, you think about 20,000 images and what that would look like for somebody that was shooting film. I don't even know if you physically could carry that much film, right?
Photomart would need to bring out a line of credit for you for sure.
So we embrace the technology that way and take advantage of it, and we're fortunate that we have it. It allows us to just take as many images as we want, and it doesn't cost us anything but our time.
Digressing for the 35-year-old and under crowd, Photomart was where you took your film to get developed. It was a booth that looked like a drive-through burger joint.
I actually remember those. I actually do. I remember those. Yeah.
Right?
I can still conjure the smells of the dark room, because it was just such a kind of tactile experience making the images. And when I was a kid, my folks owned a small town newspaper, and so I had my mom's old AE1 and could go snap away, and I could roll my own. I got to the point roll my own film, but I couldn't touch the the new fancy stacks of photo paper. I had to use like the scraps, and I made a lot of collages and things like that. A lot of pictures of my pet iguana as a kid. But it was fun.
You got everybody in Colorado excited for a second when you were talking about rolling your own. All those Colorado photographers excited.
I actually didn't know where he was going with that either.
And Dark Room is not from 50 Shades of Grey. It's where we developed black and white film. I think for the young audience, you've got to be very specific here, Drew.
Yeah. Well, and I marvel at the stuff, now it's all done on computers, and just the stuff that people are doing these days just blows my mind. That we've made it to this point, and then it's changing just so fast, and pretty soon we'll all be, it's all phones.
Yeah.
You say that back in the day when we started editing, we had a black and white Mac. It was a passive matrix 256. Sorry, we had a black and white. Then we upgraded it to a 256 color trackball, and we bought a 1 gigabyte Seagate Barracuda drive for $1,500 for us to do our editing with. I mean, it's come a long ways. Like I said, I used to ride dinosaurs into Rocky Mountain National Park to shoot photos.
Hold on, I gotta go down to Costco and pick up a 5 terabyte solid state drive. Don't worry, it's just a couple $100 bucks. Right. It'll be all right.
Exactly. Yeah, it's come a long ways, which is amazing. I mean, it's what allows more people to get into the the sport of it, or the professional side of it. I mean, it's become more compact. It's become more affordable. The computers have helped out in the cheat. I mean, I think it's where it's made our job harder, because we have to work that much more, at the technical side and creative side to excel. I mean, if Jason and I are teaching, workshops, I mean, you got people that we're doing that with, and we can't prove that we know what we're talking about, or, shoot in the same conditions and, produce a better photo, or at least as good of a photo. I mean, it's kind of tough to profess, being the professor.
Yeah, but you can be standing behind him and do it all with a Kodak FunSaver camera. That was one of our trivia questions from a few episodes ago. I stumped these guys with that one. Did you know the number 3 best-selling camera at B&H Photo is the Kodak FunSaver film camera?
Oh my God.
Yeah.
I did not know that.
Yeah. So start taking those to Africa if you want to up your challenge.
Middle of that cheetah.
Have Jason hanging out the back of a truck shooting wild dogs with a FunSaver.
Yeah, well, that's what I call the manual zoom, where you just walk closer.
So Drew, I know you're working on some excursions and some photo tours that you've been working on putting together for this next year. Is there any of those that you've got kind of planned out that you wanted to go over real quick, or?
Well, definitively, I mean, because it's kind of dynamic. On the website, we're always kind of changing and updating. Sometimes we might put together an itinerary and the dates might be to be determined, or we might not have the exact vendors in place. We might be changing something, so the price might be, a variable for a little bit. But, we've usually got a pretty good framework there. But as of now, kind of, definitively set in stone, we've got a February trip to Yellowstone. We've got a winter trip there. We've also got a Kenya trip, to Amboseli for the giant tuskers, and a Mara trip. So it's giant elephants and the big cats again together. In May, there's a Yellowstone bear trip a grizzly black bear trip, and obviously it's coyotes and foxes and bison, whatever else you see, but it's mostly a bear trip. And then in July, there is a South Africa trip. August, there's a Mara migration trip, which is also, it's a big cat trip among other things, but it's, in hopes of catching that big wildebeest migration. And then September next year, looks like we're going to do a pretty unique trip that I'm just going to leave out right now as a trip to look out for to Alaska. There's going to be some moose and some special trip there that not a lot of people are doing. Kind of an interesting thing that we're gonna roll out here in a little bit for people to really look forward to. And then a Teton trip in October and a Brazil Pantanal trip in November.
So where you keep mentioning the website, I don't think we've touched on that yet. Where can people find both your personal work and your business side of things, and more importantly, the photo tours? So I know some of the photo tours that you're doing in conjunction with the Wild and Exposed team here that we'll have on the Wild and Exposed landing page for sure. And you can go check there. But if you want to know about any of Drew's trips, you can check them out on his personal website, which is
so voyagersafari.com is where we put those itineraries, and you can kick to that from the social media. People that don't know, I go by Voyager Drew on Instagram, and then for my print side, I usually post my new stuff that my new fine art that's available on epicwildlifephotos.com.
Is that a fulfillment site? Sorry, Drew. A little bit of delay. That's a fulfillment site for your prints.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, it is.
So I have we'll get some personal questions here. So is your name Drew or Andrew?
It's Drew.
It's just Drew.
There's no and.
Okay.
Yep.
I am just Drew as well. And there aren't many of us out there.
No.
Like we are a rare breed. And it always, whenever there's another Drew in, I don't know, maybe a 50-mile radius, you kind of get this weird, like it gets confusing. Like every time that Jason said Drew tonight, I kind of startle and be like, oh, it's my turn. Oh no, he's nobody wants to hear me talk. We're not here to hear me talk, kind of thing. And it was just when you run into other Drews in the wild, it's interesting.
It is. It's wild. Yeah. Yeah. Well, Shakespeare said brevity is wit. So, that's, there's no point in us putting an "and" in front of it. It's just true. Much simpler. It's wittier.
And that's why we're so witty.
Yeah, you two guys are two peas in a pod for sure.
The name says it all.
It's a good thing this isn't being broadcast anywhere. Right. Thank God for that.
Well, is there anything else, Drew, that you wanted to touch on that you just want to get out there to the general public that they should know about you or your offerings?
One thing that Jason touched on, I would go back to, and it's not even so much about me, it's just in general that, because of the internet, because, anything that you want for information is out there online. People can Google and look, and they can put in, Africa Safari or Yellowstone photo workshop. They can find other people, places. They can get lots of tips. They can follow somebody's social media page and go, oh, I'm going to go there and do my own thing because I've done the research. I've looked on Google Earth. They're showing the street signs and they're showing the visitor centers, and so I know how to do it. You probably don't. You probably don't know how to do it. We didn't. Even when we go places, we look at a lot of stuff on Google Earth. We check things out. We think about where the game's going to be moving. We look at, water, seasons, weather, things like that. Nothing beats local knowledge. Nothing beats the knowledge of somebody that's been there before. I've got the same tracker in Africa and South Africa that I've used for 12 years, and he is an amazing resource for me. Even in the field, he thinks of, hey, we should go check over here. He just notices this tiny little shift in the wind, or he looks at other animals' movements and quickly decides that we should go back and check this other water hole because animals are moving later in the day. And I just don't think that saving, $1 here and $1 there is worth it when you're adding up plane tickets and lodging and park fees and rental cars and food. And you look at the totality of it, you save a few dollars and you don't get good results, you don't get good photos, you don't get good interaction. Was it worth it? I mean, should you have maybe cut your trip short, a day or two, and done a better trip, with people that knew what was going on? And I mean, we looked to other people that know. Jason and I just don't gallivant off on our own all the time. I mean, there's definitely a resource that we work with. There's other people that are in play for the stuff that we do. And, like Jason said, I mean, I've been doing Africa for over 20 years. I've made almost 30 trips over there. I've spent nearly 2.5 years of my life on the ground in Africa alone. Much less these other places. I mean, I speak Spanish, I speak Portuguese. I try to speak Afrikaans and some of the stuff over there. I mean, I get through, and it's good that they speak English everywhere, where we go. But just the culture and the nuances to work through, the getting out of the airport, the guy that you want to help you and the guy that you don't want to help you. There's a lot more that goes into this than saying, hey, you should take your 70 to 200 and your 400 2.8 and make sure you take 3 extra cards. I mean, yeah, that's good on the gear side, but your total trip and your total experience it's much more complex than that. There's a lot that goes into it. And as many times as I've done it, when I'm planning an itinerary for another group or people to put together, I probably put in as much time as somebody else puts into their research, and I'm just filling in the details. They're starting from scratch. So I think that's where our value really comes in. It's the been there, done that, and we've made the mistakes too. I'm actually known for saying we don't learn from our successes, we learn from our failures. And so, I screwed up so many times that I'm getting almost perfect at this. And so, I mean, that's avoid it. If you can learn from our mistakes and we can give you a better trip and an efficient trip, you ought to think about taking advantage of it. Take advantage of our knowledge that's come through our trips and falls.
Well, it's very interesting to hear, when you do look at the cost breakdowns on a lot of these things, and Wild and Exposed, we had a bear boat trip that just was a great success. And, if you were to piece that trip together, doing day trips and then having to stay in hotels and meals and things like that, whereas buying a package where you've got expert guides, a liveaboard boat, you're out there more hours of the day, you're actually at the end of the day, it's cheaper to do one of these packages or this boat trip like we just did than piecing it together like the independent traveler. And so it really, I hear what you're saying there. Amen.
Yeah, well, even if you cut a little bit, like a perfect example of one of ours would be like a winter Yellowstone trip. Roughly about $2,500 for what we do. And that's all in. And, Jason can attest, not just to Africa, but, he's been on several of the itineraries that I've put together. And, we're not cutting corners with it. We do really nice lodging. It's comfortable. There's TVs for us to put photos up on. We've got a chef that puts things together. We're not scrambling at night to figure out where we're going to go to eat and how we're going to put things together. We've got the transportation taken care of. We've got the big coaches, the big off-road coaches when we do the Yellowstone trip. And if somebody puts it together on their own, they're not going to be in a private group. They're not going to be with a driver that stops for the right opportunities. They're not going to even come close to the encounters that we get, and they might save $300 or $400 in 3 days of photography, a total 5-day trip. I mean, they're not even going to save $500 if they go do it on their own. And they're going to be with 15 other people. Again, they're going to see lots of things like waterfalls and geysers, which is fine if that's the trip that you want to do. But if you want a focused winter, close encounter photography type trip, I mean, we're doing it one scale up and well more organized for almost the same amount of money.
Good deal. Good. Do you go see the mud pots? I want to see the mud pots.
We can take you to see the frozen pots.
Okay. Okay. All right. Whew, I'm in. Sign me up.
Yeah, actually, with the thermals, there's always some kind of mud bubbling somewhere there, and if you want to see those, we can take you there.
I've got an artistic vision. I need to scratch that itch with the mud pots. So
now, bison standing in the background at sunrise Now you're talking about a photo there, Drew.
Just some birds flying through, some ducks,
Yeah.
some ducks. Get us
We
some
don't-
ducks stat.
No, there's no ducks there. They've migrated down to Utah.
Too funny.
Go to the elk range there in Jackson to film all those ducks sitting on the poles and eating the carcasses and
Right.
everything.
I've heard rumors. I've yet to see.
They're the brown ones with the white heads. They're huge ducks.
Yeah, still lost. I'm
They're on
not
our-
tracking on this.
National bird. Yeah.
Not your nation, our nation.
Well, that's Drew. Thank you so much for coming on tonight. It's been such a pleasure to meet such another charming Drew and share the stories and times and
Likewise.
yeah, right on. We'll have to get together sometime and do some shooting.
Absolutely. Maybe I'll make it up to your North Country. I like it up there.
Polar bear season starts I think our first tours are first week in October, and then it'll go right up through like third week in November when the bay freezes, and then the foxes show up right after that. It just goes crazy with foxes around here, and then we'll take a little break, and then I think probably February our Aurora tours start up, and then actually I think we're going to be doing our Bear Cubs and Borealis tour again this year, where we go film the polar bear cubs coming out of the dens, but we pair it with some northern lights, and I mean it's all 40, 50 below
Nice.
kind of stuff. And then it's summer for like 2 weeks, and then back to winter.
You've been listening to the Wild and Exposed podcast. If you haven't yet, please give us a rating and a review. And make sure you're subscribed so that you'll get every episode we produce as soon as we drop it. And as always, thanks for tuning in.
We're gonna make it someday. Nothing's gonna get in our way. We will be the biggest band in town.